we've got here online Dr. Ghassan Abu Sittah. He's a British-Palestinian plastic and reconstructive surgeon. He's worked as a war surgeon across the Middle East, and last year he spent 7 weeks at Al-Shifa and Al-Ali Baptist Hospital in Gaza, who, of course, therefore he was treating patients
Recording
wounded.
in progress.
Oh. The meeting's being recorded, there we go. Treating patients who were wounded by Israel's genocidal assault. And since April, he's been rector of the University of Glasgow after being elected by students, which is fantastic. Clearly, he's joining us online. He'll be talking for sort of 12 to 15 minutes. So over to you, Ghassan.
Thank you very much for this invitation. And again, my apologies for not being able to be with you. Experience and history has taught us that one of the things that Israel always does in Lebanon is it bombs the civilian airport on the first day of any attack, and with things heading towards an expansion of this war into a regional war, I was asked to come to Beirut to help organize the humanitarian work and the response of the health system in responding to any potential escalation. So the plan was for me to be with you in London, but at the moment I am back in Beirut. I think it's very, very difficult to speak about anything today for any of us who has seen the images and heard the details of Israel's latest atrocity in an ongoing litany of atrocities. Israel seems to excel in shocking us after 10 months of continuous genocide. And it holds these particularly gruesome atrocities, like this morning's, in order to scupper any plans for a ceasefire. And so whenever there's talk of a ceasefire, then we have these atrocities as Israel signals what it believes is its intention to continue this genocide. Because at the end of the day, this is not a metaphoric genocide. This is a literal genocide. And as the piece in the Lancet highlighted, currently Israel stands at killing 8 to 10% of Gaza's population, and Israel plans to continue. But like any crime, any basic crime, what we saw witnessed this morning, when Israel fired 3 missiles at Palestinians in the dawn prayers inside one of the schools that had turned into an internally displaced, that crime can be explained away by understanding it as any murder crime. Someone pulled the trigger, and that is certainly Israel and the Israeli Air Force. But someone supplied the murderer with its weapons, and looking at some of the gruesome images, it looks like a fragmentation missile was used to really kill as many civilians as physically possible. And then someone provided the money for that crime to be committed, provided the protection and the enablement for that crime to be committed as part of a long series of crimes that have not just started in this genocide, but go back for 76 years. And someone who paid for the whole thing. Everything from the jet fuel to the fighters that fired the missile, to the salaries of the pilots, to the salaries of the technicians who armed the plane. Everyone in this crime was paid by someone. And therefore, for us to understand what is incumbent for us to do to stop this genocide, we need to see this as that crime, as a genocide in which Israel is only the tip of the genocidal iceberg, and that there is an axis of genocide. Countries that have supplied these weapons, Germany that increased its supply of weapons tenfold since the 7th of October, the United Kingdom that has signed, whose government had signed 108 export licenses over the previous 9 to 10 months. France, Austria, Holland, all of these countries constitute an axis of genocide that has allowed these weapons to reach Israel unabated. Yesterday, the CNN announced that the United States and President Biden had signed an order to release $3.5 billion worth of weapons to Israel. And so we know who's supplying Israel with the weapons to commit this crime. And then we need to understand the institutions that are the glue that bind all of these processes that allow these crimes to take place. The financial institutions, the businesses that donate to Israel, the financial institutions that allow Israel to conduct its business. And then the institutions that help design and plan these weapons. The Israeli universities, whose research centers are critical to the development of a lot of these weapons, whether they are the drone-fired missiles or the quadcopters that have a sniper in them. And these Israeli universities not only have been given by the European Union equal access to all research funding, which is completely unconditional. So their research that then translates into these fragmentation bombs and into these killer drones, that is subsidized by the European Union and aided by their cooperation with UK, European, and US universities. And so they have partners across the globe in academia that help them design and execute the production of these weapons of murder. And so as we follow this crime, like any other crime, we need to understand this web, this network that allows this one moment to happen. The taking of lives of 100 Palestinians as they were praying by 3 missiles this morning by the Israeli army, and the destruction of their lives and the lives of their families. And so the aim of any divestment movement is to ensure that that network that supports these crimes of murder, supports the intentional creation of a famine, supports Israel's decision to deny UNICEF access of over 1 million vaccines, polio vaccines, to allow them into the Gaza Strip, despite the fact that it has just vaccinated its soldiers in Gaza to polio to ensure that they don't catch this virus and only the Palestinian children catch this virus. All of this network does not happen because of Israel alone. Israel is incapable of doing these crimes, committing these crimes on its own. Israel is incapable of mounting a genocidal project for over 10 months on its own. And the job of the divestment movement is to dry up the finance and the financial support to the commission of these crimes, to ensure, like any crime, it is not able to access the capital that it requires to develop the weapons, to commit the crimes, to pay the perpetrators and to continue with a genocidal project. And in every part, at every junction of this network of perpetrators, we need to ensure that these perpetrators, whether the universities or the companies or the banks or the financial institutions or the donors, are first exposed for what they are: child killers, genociders, murderers of people who they've never met, they've never seen, but have decided because of, by virtue of the color of their skin, their lives are ungrievable, their dead children are ungrievable, and that they need to be made an example for other people in the colonies who ever consider rising up against settler colonialism. It's our job where we are in the UK, in Europe, in North America, and in the rest of the world to hold them to account and to ensure that it becomes too costly for them to, one, remain in the dark, unseen perpetrators and unseen members of a gang that is committing these acts of murder, but also to ensure that it becomes too costly for them and their shareholders to continue in their role as part of the genocide enablement apparatus. The scenes today are absolutely horrific. And what is even more disturbing is that the wounded went to Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital, which had been bombed on the 17th of October. At the very beginning of the war, when Israel was testing the world's resolve to its plan to destroy the health system in Gaza, and found a world that is complicit, found human rights organizations that became complicit in accepting its narrative about Al-Ahli Hospital, found NGOs and charities that became complicit in its narrative, found media outlets that became complicit in its narrative, so that when it did test out its genocide enablement system on the 17th of October, it understood that this genocide enablement system was going to allow it to carry out its crimes of genocide and its destruction of the health system with no consequence. These wounded, when they got to Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital, found the hospital that had very little fuel, that had almost no medical supplies, that had been bombed, and that could barely serve one or two of them because it could not function as a hospital. And its few surgeons who were still inside it were unable to operate because Israel had denied them the very little, even the very little aid that was coming through Rafah had been stopped over the last 2 months when Israel occupied the Rafah border. And since then, had only allowed 5 trucks full of medical aid to enter the Gaza Strip. We need to see what is happening as a crime, and we need to untangle the web of enablers and complicit members and hold them to task. And we need to dry up the sources of finance that allow these crimes to be perpetrated and allow the perpetrators to get away so that they can commit other crimes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ghassan. I don't know if you can hear the applause via my mic, but people really appreciate you spending the time to come and talk to us, and thank you very much for doing that.